Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the January 2017 edition of East Porter County Tech Connect. Glad you're joining us if you're live. Chris and Diana here with you today. We have a pretty full agenda, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. So let's take a high-level overview of what we're going to be talking about today. Diana's going to give us a rundown of some of the new features of Google Hangouts and specifically how we can use that for professional development. We're going to talk about Hyperdocs, Android apps for Chrome, and then we're going to finish up with our security topic of today of phishing and ransomware. Just a reminder for live viewers, if you are viewing this video live and you have a question, please feel free to enter it into the chat window at any time. We will be responding to those in real time. And when I say real time, it's about a 20-second delay from when we broadcast to when you can actually see the video. But feel free to ask those throughout the video. We'll be answering them as we go along, and then we will have a time for a Q&A session at the end. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Diana.
Hi there. Neither of the topics that I'm talking about today are really new or updated, but they seem relevant to our district right now. And the first I'm going to talk about is Google Hangouts. This conversation continues the one that we've been having about the potential of our new secondary teacher Chromebooks. Google Hangouts, if you remember, is basically Google's answer to FaceTime or Skype. It is available for you as part of your G Suite tools, on your account here at East Porter. And just as a note, it is disabled for all student accounts. One of the reasons that I am particularly excited about the distribution of our new teacher Chromebooks is that they will allow us really high quality Google Hangout experiences. Google Hangouts will allow you to meet virtually with your colleagues. Some groups have been using Google Hangouts to meet to do the curriculum work for the district instead of having to drive to one campus. And now that everybody has a new Chromebook, that allows us to use Google Hangouts and we can rely on that to be of quality. I see us using that even more often to meet. I use it regularly to meet with different coach groups, and Chris and I have used it to have a conversation with GoGuardian. We are actually using it right now as part of YouTube Live, so we're using it in a different way. This, like I mentioned before, this is one service that is truly dependent on the quality of the device, and so now we really do have the perfect situation to start looking at what Google Hangouts can do for us as educators and also in our classrooms. Google Hangouts does allow up to 25 users at once. This used to be maxed out at 10, but last spring they upped the number for education accounts to have up to 25 people in a Google Hangouts. When you are in a Google Hangout, one of the features that I love about it is that the screen automatically focuses on the person who is speaking. So when you are in a virtual meeting, you can see the face of the person that is talking to you at that time, it takes a second to get used to because it hops among the participants, but it's really nice to be able to see clearly who's talking. You can also decide not to show your face like we're doing right now. It's a little less awkward when you first get started using Google Hangouts, but you can screen share. We're screen sharing a Google Slides presentation right now to make this live stream. You can also mute your mic and your video so you can interact or just listen rather than interact the whole time. I will say that if you are doing a virtual meeting, it's best to use one device to one person. It can be a little bit awkward when you're in a huge group of people and you're utilizing a Chromebook to connect. I think the one Chromebook to one person works a little bit better. So if you are looking to use Google Hangouts with a large group, we do have access to some webcams. So you can reach out to me if you'd like to go beyond using Google Hangouts with your Chromebook. Once you start utilizing Google Hangouts, it's easy to see the potential that this tool has to connect your students in your class. You can use it with your class to connect within the district and beyond. We have several teachers who have connected their classrooms within the district to have discussions over various topics. And we've also had classes here connect with other classes in the state of Indiana. I remember one instance, a class at Washington Township connected with a class in Southern Indiana to have a discussion about the presidential election. You can also use it to connect your class with experts in the field. I've spoken with teachers about the possibility of maybe connecting their class with a chef or something like that. Another ed tech idea is to try a mystery Google Hangout. And what that means is you connect your class to a person or a class in another part of the country, and the mystery is that you don't know the location of the person that you're connecting with. So then the activity requires that students do some investigative work to discover where that person is located. I'll also say that Google Hangouts is a really good place to start if you are looking to get started with instructional video. Like what we're doing right now would be a great way to create some authentic instructional videos for your students. During March, I am challenging everyone to try Google Hangouts. So I will be offering quick meetings, either one-on-one or in big groups of up to 25, to encourage us to try Google Hangouts. And if you have already been using Google Hangouts, then my challenge is to include that a little bit more often in your class or for meetings that you need to have. The meeting will cover how to set up a Hangout, the different ways that you can start a Hangout or invite others to hang out with you, and how to use the tool. We can also talk about different ideas for your classroom use. So look for that information shortly. If you are up to my March Madness Google Hangouts challenge, I'll be sending some sign-up info out very shortly. Okay, the next topic that I want to discuss is, again, not necessarily a brand new topic, but I've seen a lot of teachers recently successful with the idea of Hyperdocs in our district. So Hyperdocs utilize Google Docs or other G Suite tools to thoughtfully package a lesson that is an interactive learning experience. And I have to note that Hyperdocs are not the same thing as digital worksheets. The concept of a Hyperdoc, it was created by 3 ed tech people in California, and they now call themselves the Hyperdoc Girls. They wrote the Hyperdoc handbook, and below this video, you'll see a link to their website. And the Hyperdoc Girls are really open to sharing. They're really collaborative, so you can reach out to them via email or on Twitter, and they are happy to share with you. They have tons of resources on their website, different examples of Hyperdocs and templates if you want to create your own. So take a look at that if you're interested. What I love about Hyperdocs is that they encourage us to rethink G Suite tools. Sometimes it's easy to look at Google Docs and look at it as a substitute to Microsoft Word, or we look at Google Slides and we think of it only as a presentation tool. Hyperdocs helps us to be more innovative with our use of these tools, which then can spark us to be creative while moving up the SAMR framework. I'll show you an example of what a Hyperdoc looks like in just a second. It'll be easier to understand what I'm talking about right now. But the structure of a true Hyperdoc, as created by the Hyperdoc Girls, takes your students through a variety of different strategies, and it really makes you be thoughtful about instructional design. So you can see that the traditional framework is to look at engaging students, having them explore the content, asking them to explain it back, apply it, share, and then reflect, and then finally extend on the learning. I'll also share that the Hyperdoc Girls, besides preaching that a Hyperdoc is not a digital worksheet, it is also not a document with hyperlinks. It's more than that, because it asks students to be a little bit more interactive with the material. And I'm going to hop out of this Google Slides presentation right now to show you an example of what I'm talking about here. This is an example of a Hyperdoc created for an elementary classroom. And you can see that it very clearly takes you through the students through different steps. And it also is visually engaging. When you make Hyperdocs, it kind of forces you to learn different techniques and different features of the tool that you're using. So it's nice and clean. The tables take the students through step by step. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that can look like depending if you're using a Hyperdoc for like a one-day lesson or an entire unit or an entire week or even a substitute plan, which is another thing that Hyperdocs are really good for. What we really keep in mind while creating Hyperdocs next to SAMR, of course, is the 4 C's. Hyperdocs ask our students to create, communicate, collaborate, and think critically. You can create a Hyperdoc using a variety of tools. It is not tool focused at all. I will suggest if you're just getting started with Hyperdocs to try it using a Google Doc. It's a good place to start. Hyperdocs also support blended and digital learning. I've seen teachers use them successfully for sub-plans. If they're not going to be there for the day, they package their lesson for the day in a Hyperdoc so that students can work through things self-paced, and they have all of those resources right there at their fingertips. I've also seen teachers use Hyperdocs successfully to differentiate for students, because you can choose to create your Hyperdoc in a way that students can take themselves through that lesson. And so it's really nice for differentiations. You can have different groups of students working at different levels on different things. Hyperdocs also give our students an experience that's authentic to East Porter. Because Hyperdocs are customizable, you can consider best practice for digital learning, because we're adding our own authentic teacher voice to the lessons that we're creating. So we're not only using instructional videos that are pre-made for us. We're not only using digital activities that are we find online. We're also adding our own voice to the Hyperdoc so that the kids are learning authentically from us. All right, finally, Hyperdocs are completely customizable. It's really more of a concept that you can create however you'd like. You can use your favorite G Suite tool. When choosing a tool for a Hyperdoc, I like to start by thinking about the pacing of the lesson. So first, we talk about how the Hyperdoc is going to be used. Are we going to package a lesson for one day or an entire unit, an entire week? Docs are a great tool for shorter lessons, but I personally like Google Slides if I'm going to create a Hyperdoc for an entire unit. You can really be visually engaging if you use something like Google Draw. So you have to think about your purpose and the student learning objectives, and then think about the pacing really before you choose the tool that you plan on using to create your Hyperdoc. Hyperdocs can also be as blended or as digital as you want. So don't think that using a Hyperdoc requires you to be completely online and not interact with your students. You can add non-tech tasks into the lesson. So you can add class discussion, things like that, as you work through the lesson with your students. And on that note, you can also utilize your Hyperdocs in a variety of ways. You can create a Hyperdoc that you all go through as a class together and stop to discuss and to collaborate in person. Or you can also incorporate mini lessons throughout the Hyperdoc, depending on the pacing of it. Or you can do it completely digitally and have your students be self-paced through a Hyperdoc. If you would like to collaborate on a Hyperdoc, or if you're interested in learning a little bit more about what Hyperdocs can do for you and your students, just go ahead and reach out to me. I have tons of examples. I'm happy to help you find things that are already out there that you can modify for your classroom. And most often, working with teachers here at East Porter, a teacher will shoot me an email and say, hey, I'm working on this Hyperdoc. Would you mind collaborating with me digitally to really think about the visuals, or maybe adding some other applications to it as we try to make it as interactive for our students as possible. All right.
All right, next on our agenda for today is Android apps for Chrome. This has kind of been a topic that's sort of like the Yeti. We hear a lot about it, but we've never seen it before. In fact, Google has been talking about this since at least 2015. There's no denying that Chromebooks have been very successful devices, especially in the education world. But one of the things that's hampered their broader adoption is the lack of software or apps. The Chromebook is a fantastic device for getting on the web, for interacting with G Suite, but it's been kind of hampered by lack of productivity software. So Google set out several years ago to find a way to bring the 1 million plus apps from the Google Play Store and make them run in that Chromebook. And they've had a lot of stops and starts, but they're saying that 2017 is going to be the year. So what they've recently announced is that all Chromebooks launching in 2017 and beyond as well as select models from previous years. And the nice thing about this is every model of Chromebook that we have at East Porter qualifies for this. Will be able to run Android apps. Unfortunately, they're a little sparse on the details at this time. We've been told that in the coming weeks, we'll get the tools on the administrative side of things to see exactly how we can roll that out. What we've heard initially is it's going to be very similar to how we're currently doing apps from the Chrome OS store. But rather than kind of give information that we've been unable to verify, we'll kind of take and wait and see. But there's no denying that this could potentially be huge. Like I mentioned earlier, there's over 1 million apps currently in the Google Play Store compared to about 30,000 or so apps and extensions in the Chrome OS store. So has the possibility to really open up some new avenues for the Chromebooks. Last month, we talked about Sophos at home, and one of my goals with Tech Connect every month is to deal with a security-related topic. So last month, we talked about the importance of having a robust security suite protecting your home computers or devices. This month, we're going to talk about a couple of security topics, phishing and ransomware. These are issues that we deal with here at East Porter, and these are issues that we deal with at home. So I just want to share some really high-level, kind of a high-level overview of these two topics. And then, as always, if you have any questions and you're watching live, feel free to throw them in the chat or feel free to send me an email. So the first topic we're going to talk about is phishing. And what phishing is fraudulent email messages or phone calls designed to steal your sensitive information, such as your username, your password, financial information. And we've all gotten these spam messages. They've gotten a lot more advanced. They've gotten a lot more genuine looking. They utilize social engineering, which is kind of play on some of our personal weaknesses to increase the likeliness of success. And as I mentioned, their primary goal is to steal financial information, which is then sold to other people who will actually use that, or that the particular individual who's running the phishing campaign would make the illegitimate transactions themselves. Also, when they steal account information, it's typically for to gain access to the accounts personally, or leak sensitive information, or again, sell that to other people on the black market. So when we talk about phishing, the big thing is how do we prevent it? And as we kind of went over in the last slide, phishing is it's a people problem, not so much as a technology problem. So we do have some technology solutions, but the first thing is to just be aware and trust your spam filter. Google and Microsoft and the other email vendors out there have very, very powerful spam filters, and we know that they're not perfect. But they're using a lot of things on the back end to truly kind of filter out a lot of this junk. So if it's in your spam box, initially, you need to be very wary of it. As far as what's in the emails in particular, be very, very wary of email messages with embedded links or attachments, even if they're emails from a known source. It's all about the contacts. So what I mean by that is that a lot of times people's accounts can be compromised, your brother, sister, family member, coworkers, whatever, and then those accounts can be used to perpetuate phishing campaigns. So look for the context of the email, even if it's from a known source. So an example would be if you got an email from me requesting that you click a link to deal with your W-2 at East Porter. I don't deal with any of the financial aspect out here, so it would be very out of context for a message from my account to deal with W-2s. And that's a big warning sign right there. Some of the other, and these are kind of older ones, but they're still true, misspellings. Look for misspellings in these email messages. Poor grammar, bad graphics, and then the biggest ones are threats or sense of urgency. So I get an email from my bank that says, if I don't immediately reply to this, they're going to close my banking account down. Well, that's, the chances of Chase doing that are probably, pretty slim.
I once got an email from a former student that said that he was in a foreign country and needed bail money. Just an example, a pretty funny example of this.
And some of them do seem goofy, but they prey on our weaknesses and they prey on our curiosity. So some additional ways that we can prevent this, as always, up-to-date antivirus software And it's not so much the antivirus software itself that'll help you, it's that a lot of the new antivirus softwares have web control built in. So specifically when we talked about Sophos Home last week, it has traditional filtering capabilities, but it also has the abilities to filter out malicious websites. So that if you do click on one of those links in an email, we're hoping that the security software will pick that up. Another is browser extensions. There's a lot of ad blocking extensions out there, and the ad blocking extensions have kind of morphed to also include lists that prevent you from accessing sites that have been used for malware purposes. So I specifically pointed out uBlock Origin. That's an extension that we have already pushed out to all the Chromebooks, students and staff alike, as well as all the Windows desktops out here. And it really keeps a lot of not just unwanted advertising at bay, but it also helps with malware prevention. So, and let me just add real quick that we'll be talking about a number of different software steps to take today. These would be suggestions to use at home. We are already utilizing these suggestions internally here. So please don't try to add this to your East Porter device. It's already been done, but things to consider for home. Finally, if you believe that your account has been compromised, through a phishing email, always a good idea to change your password and make it unique. 2016, we saw a lot of data breaches. Yahoo was breached, LinkedIn was breached, and one of the things that they get is when they get your passwords, they will sell that, and people will try to use those credentials to access other sites with them. So you can really kind of minimize the damage that's done if you're utilizing different passwords for different services. And then finally, when in doubt, reach out. If you ever have any questions about an email you get to an East Porter, one of your East Porter accounts, feel free to contact us and we'll evaluate it for you. Please don't click the link if you're not entirely sure. It's happened internally, and we've probably all have it happen at home, and it just causes a lot of chaos. So when in doubt, reach out. Ransomware is the next topic we're going to go over. Ransomware uses some of the same stylistic approaches as phishing does, but it's a far more damaging issue when it comes down to it. So ransomware is a computer malware which encrypts files and then demands ransom money to decrypt your files. And let me say that this does not impact Chromebooks at all. They have yet to see this on Chromebooks. This would primarily impact Windows computers. So when we talk about ransomware, we just want to make sure that really relates to Windows computers, both in the classroom, because it's something that we actively deal with here, as well as at home. And what will happen when you get ransomware in your computer is the malware that's installed will come up, and it will give you a specific period of time to pay the ransomer. And if you do not answer them in that period of time, then you will lose all the files that have been encrypted. Typically, you're going to lose your entire computer. Again, it utilizes social engineering to increase the likelihood of success, and it spreads in largely the same manner through email, malicious attachments, links in the email or on the web. Social media is a big one, so malicious links that have been inserted into feeds on Facebook or Twitter. And finally, malvertising. Malvertising is probably not one that a lot of folks have heard about, but essentially the scammers have figured out ways that they can get their malicious content onto advertising networks that appear on the web, and you can click these links and get this malware installed on your computer from advertisements that appear on web pages. So we'll talk a little bit about mitigating that later on. All right, so again, preventing ransomware, kind of along the same vein as phishing. So be wary of email messages with embedded links or attachments, again, even from known sources, if the context of the email seems weird. This is where we now then diverge a little bit. Keep your operating system and other system software up to date. In phishing, phishing really doesn't take advantage of flaws in software, but a lot of times the people who are perpetuating ransomware scams will use vulnerability in Windows, Adobe Flash, and Java to kind of get the software on board. So it's always important to make sure that you're running your Windows updates, you're running Adobe Flash, Java, etc. And again, please do not do this to your computer in your classroom. We're handling all this centrally. Jeff and Denise are fantastic about pushing out software updates as they're released. Another tip for home: if you are not actively using Adobe Flash or Java or Microsoft Silverlight, go ahead and remove them. It just kind of takes away that threat vector. And a website's going to tell you, if there's a website that you're visiting frequently that needs one of these plugins, it will tell you to install it. So you can always try getting rid of them. And if you're not getting any messages, or it's not kind of stopping you from getting to the sites you need, you probably didn't need them from the get-go. Utilizing updated antivirus software, always important. It's kind of a very reactionary measure, and unfortunately, there is no perfect antivirus software. So just running antivirus software is not going to necessarily keep you safe, but it's a good step. Filtering the web for malicious sites, something that we're doing out here, something that you can do at home through Sophos at Home, like we talked about last month, or even through a service like OpenDNS, which we could, if you have questions about that, you can feel free to email me. And then finally, browser extensions. So again, uBlock Origin can stop some of that malvertising aspect of a ransomware infection. Excuse me. So hopefully you guys found that helpful. Ransomware in particular was a huge topic in 2017. And basically the scammers have found they can make so much money from doing this that it kind of just perpetuates itself. But both of them come down to user education more than anything. We try to do security like an onion out here, where we have as many layers as possible, but ultimately people are the most important aspect of good security.
Awesome. All right. Now is the time for any questions you guys might have. And if you aren't watching live, please feel free, if you're watching this later, to email us any questions that you have about the topics today or anything beyond that. I'm going to scroll through here and look at all the comments to see if we missed anything as we were speaking. All right, Tom reminded us that he was able to attend our last admin meeting via Google Hangouts, which was really cool. I remember Chris George calling him Digitom, which was awesome. So he didn't have to miss the meeting even though he was not at work. And Tom and Brandy have the idea to use a Hyperdoc as a meeting agenda or staff meeting agenda, which would be really cool. I'll totally help you guys work on that. And Brandy would like to know if there is an antivirus software that Chris recommends.
Probably the Sophos at Home that we talk about. I mean, if there was a perfect software, there'd be no reason to write malware. So it's kind of a personal preference thing. But we've always felt that Sophos has been reputable and has done well. That's why we've continued to use it at East Porter for a number of years. And the Sophos at Home, which they make freely available, which covers Windows or Mac, is a nice piece. And specifically what I like about Sophos at Home is, again, beyond just a traditional antivirus filter, it also has that web control element built in where you can tell it to filter malicious sites, so that if you do click on one of those links by accident or out of curiosity, it kind of gives you a separate line of defense. And I think the website for that is www.sophos.com/home or something of, I think that's right. So
yeah.
Yep.
It's also linked in our last Tech Connect. And if we'll happily share that out with you guys if you have questions about it. Let's see. And on that note, if you do have a suggestion for a topic that you'd like to suggest for our next Tech Connect live stream, please feel free to share that out with us if there's something you feel that we're missing. All right, I don't see any other questions. So thanks so much for joining us live or later, and we'll see you later.
Have a great day.